Comment down what you think about these stories or just a hello, and the team will reply. We always reply to the comments. As always, please like and subscribe and help this channel grow. Thank you. It all started when my ex-wife and I got into a nasty custody battle over our daughter. I never imagined it would spiral so out of control and destroy my life. At first, the divorce proceedings were tense but fairly straightforward. We both wanted to do what was best for our daughter, or so I thought. Little did I know my ex had other plans. She started making wild accusations, claiming I was an unfit father who put our daughter in danger. She fabricated evidence and coached our daughter to lie about things I had supposedly done. I was blindsided. I had never been anything but a loving, devoted dad. When we went to court, my ex painted a horrific picture of me. The judge, swayed by her crocodile tears and false evidence, awarded her full custody. I was devastated, but I vowed to fight this to prove my ex's lies. How could the system fail me so completely? I poured my life savings into hiring the best lawyer I could find, but it was no use. My ex was relentless, pulling out all the stops to destroy me. She badmouthed me to anyone who would listen, my family, my friends, even my employer. Soon, I was completely isolated with no support system. My ex used our daughter as a pawn, manipulating her and turning her against me. My sweet little girl, who used to run into my arms, now recoiled from me, spitting hateful words that I knew didn't truly belong to her. It was heartbreaking. As if that wasn't enough, my ex started systematically dismantling everything I had built. She got my bank accounts frozen, making it impossible for me to pay my bills. I lost my job when my boss, influenced by my ex's smear campaign, fired me. Homeless and broke, I had no choice but to move in with my aging parents. I felt like a failure, watching helplessly as my ex destroyed my life. The legal system continued to fail me at every turn, siding with her despite the overwhelming evidence of her lies and manipulation. I sank into a deep depression, barely able to function. I couldn't even see my own daughter anymore, as my ex had obtained a restraining order against me. I was completely powerless, watching my child slip further and further away. One day, as I was packing up the last of my belongings from my old house, I stumbled upon a box of old photos. Seeing the happy memories of our family tore me apart. In a moment of desperation, I reached out to my ex, begging her to stop this madness, to let me be a part of our daughter's life. Her response was chilling. She laughed in my face, telling me that I would never see our daughter again, and that she was going to make sure I lost everything, my job, my home, my sanity. It was then that I realized the full extent of her cruelty. This wasn't just a custody battle. It was a calculated campaign to ruin me completely. From that day on, I watched helplessly as my ex followed through on her threats. She continued to manipulate the courts, twisting every situation to her advantage. I lost my job, my home, and even my parents' support as my ex's lies spread like wildfire. I was utterly alone, reduced to a shell of the man I once was. My ex had taken everything from me, my daughter, my life, my will to go on. I sank deeper and deeper into despair, contemplating ending it all. But I couldn't give up. For my daughter's sake, I had to keep fighting. I scraped together every last penny I had and hired a new lawyer, determined to expose my ex's lies once and for all. It was a long and arduous battle, but finally, the tide started to turn. After months of tireless work, my lawyer was able to uncover the truth. My ex's fabricated evidence was exposed, and the judge saw through her manipulation. Slowly, I started to regain custody of my daughter bit by bit. It was a long and painful road, but eventually I was able to rebuild my life. It took years, but I never gave up. I fought tooth and nail to reclaim my daughter and my place in her life. And though the scars of that ordeal will never fully heal, I'm grateful to have my little girl back in my arms where she belongs. My ex, on the other hand, is now facing the consequences of her actions. She's lost everything: her reputation, her credibility, and most importantly, her relationship with our daughter. It's a bittersweet victory, but one I'll take. I know that my story is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the lengths a vindictive ex-spouse will go to in order to destroy the other. But it's also a testament to the power of perseverance and the unbreakable bond between a parent and child. No matter how dark the situation may seem, there is always hope. If you find yourself in a similar position, don't lose faith. Fight for what's right, and never stop fighting for your family. It may be a long and arduous battle, but in the end, the truth will set you free. I remember the early days after the divorce when the custody battle first started heating up. My ex began making outlandish demands, insisting on full custody and exaggerated child support payments. I tried to be reasonable, suggesting shared custody so we could both be a regular part of our daughter's life, but my ex wouldn't hear of it. In her eyes, I didn't deserve to be a father at all. That's when the false accusations began. My ex told the court I had abused and neglected our daughter, which was an absolute lie. She even coached our little girl to repeat these lies. As a loving dad, it broke my heart to hear my own child make up horrible stories about me. I knew my ex had manipulated her and poisoned her mind against me. But the judge believed my ex's claims. Despite my insistence that they were false, the judge awarded my ex full legal and physical custody. I was only allowed brief, supervised visitation. It made no sense. I'd always been an attentive, caring father. Now I could barely see my own daughter. Over the next few months, the situation spiraled further out of control. My ex kept fabricating evidence to make me look unfit as a parent. She even hired people to follow me and try to catch me doing something illegal or immoral. I felt constantly watched, like I was going to be entrapped at any moment. I tried to fight back legally, but the courts were unrelentingly on my ex's side. She had everyone convinced I was a dangerous deadbeat dad. No matter how much I spent on lawyers, the judge wouldn't budge. My legal bills piled up as my hope faded. That's when my ex decided to go for the jugular. She launched a smear campaign against me at my workplace, telling vicious lies about my character. Before long, I lost my job. She drained my bank account too. I was left penniless, unemployed, and unable to see my daughter. As I spiraled into poverty, my ex swooped in for the kill. She convinced the court to terminate my parental rights altogether. Just like that, I had lost my little girl forever. My ex smugly told me she'd make sure my daughter grew up thinking I was a monster. To date, it was the worst moment of my life. It all started with a simple hair change. One day, I noticed my ex-partner had dyed their hair the exact same shade as mine, a unique, vibrant red that I had been sporting for years. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just a coincidence. But as the days passed, the similarities became more and more unsettling. They began mirroring my wardrobe choices, wearing the same styles and brands of clothing that I favored. The way they carried themselves, the mannerisms they adopted, it was all a reflection of my own behavior. It was as if they were slowly morphing into a carbon copy of myself. The real shock came when they started to insert themselves into my social circles. They would show up at the same events I attended, always finding a way to be in my vicinity. They would strike up conversations with my friends, expertly weaving their way into my established relationships. It was as if they were methodically erasing my presence and replacing it with their own. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that grew with each passing day. It was as if I was being systematically replaced in my own life, like a ghost being pushed out of existence. The more I tried to distance myself, the more they seemed to cling to me, desperate to maintain their twisted facsimile of my identity. The final straw came when they started to mimic my speech patterns and mannerisms. The way they laughed, the inflections in their voice, it was all a mirror image of myself. I felt like I was looking at a distorted reflection, one that was slowly encroaching on every aspect of my life. I tried to confront them, to demand an explanation for this bizarre behavior, but they simply smiled and brushed it off. We're just two peas in a pod, they would say, their voice dripping with an unsettling kind of familiarity. As the weeks turned into months, the situation only escalated. They had fully integrated themselves into my life, becoming a constant and inescapable presence. I felt like I was being erased, my identity being slowly stripped away and replaced with this twisted, uncanny doppelganger. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like I was constantly on edge, never knowing when or where this person would appear, always ready to insert themselves into my life. It was exhausting both physically and mentally to constantly be on the defensive, to always be looking over my shoulder. I tried to seek help, to reach out to friends and family, but they seemed oblivious to the gravity of the situation. They would laugh it off, telling me that I was being paranoid, that I was just imagining things. But I knew the truth. This was no figment of my imagination. This was a very real and very terrifying reality. As time went on, the doppelganger's grip on my life only tightened. They had wormed their way into every aspect of my existence, from my work to my hobbies to my most intimate relationships. It was as if they were systematically dismantling my life, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of me. I felt like I was slowly losing my mind, drowning in a sea of uncertainty and fear. Every time I looked in the mirror, I half expected to see their face staring back at me, a cruel parody of my own features. The once vibrant person I had once been was fading, replaced by a hollow, anxious shell. The worst part was the utter helplessness I felt. No matter what I did, I couldn't seem to shake this person from my life. They were always there, a constant and inescapable presence, a shadow that followed me everywhere I went. It was a living nightmare, a surreal and terrifying experience that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I felt like I was slowly being erased, like my very existence was being consumed by this uncanny doppelganger who was hell-bent on replacing me. To this day, I'm not sure how I managed to break free from their grasp. It was a long and arduous process, one that required immense strength, resilience, and the support of few trusted allies. But eventually, I was able to reclaim my life, to rebuild the pieces that had been so painstakingly dismantled. The scars, both physical and emotional, will likely never fully heal. The memory of that ordeal will forever be etched into my mind, a haunting reminder of the fragility of our identities and the lengths to which some people will go to shatter them. Even now, years later, I can't help but feel a chill when I see someone who bears a striking resemblance to me. The fear of that uncanny doppelganger resurfacing, of being erased once again, is ever present. It's a burden I carry with me, a constant reminder of the trauma I endured. But I've learned to be more resilient, to trust my instincts, and to never take my identity for granted. And while the memory of that ordeal will always linger, I'm grateful for the strength and the perspective it has given me. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, we have the power to reclaim our lives and our sense of self. The experience taught me that identity is fragile. It can be slowly stripped away if you aren't careful. I used to take my individuality for granted, but now I know how precious it is. I no longer see myself as invincible or untouchable. A sense of self is something that must be nurtured and protected. My unsettling encounter also revealed the disturbing lengths some people will go to in order to possess someone fully. The complete erasure of my identity, only to have it replaced with theirs, showed me how far obsession can go. It was a complete violation of my personhood. Ultimately, reclaiming my independence and sense of self after that ordeal took tremendous courage. But it taught me that I'm resilient, I can come back from the darkest of places. And while scars remain, I emerged wiser and more grateful for this gift called individuality. My life will never be the same after such an eerie encounter. I'm now aware of the fragility of identity, but I also know the power of perseverance. If I can survive that, I can survive anything. I see life now through wiser eyes, with a newfound appreciation for my irreplaceable self. I never thought my life would unravel like this. It all started when my ex-girlfriend, Holly, created a blog dedicated to exposing our relationship. At first, I didn't take it seriously. I assumed it would just be another one of her dramatic outbursts, and that it would blow over in a few days. Boy, was I wrong. Holly had always been a little unpredictable, but I never imagined she would stoop this low. The blog was filled with intimate details about our time together, private messages, embarrassing moments, and even explicit photos that she had taken without my knowledge. She painted herself as the innocent victim, claiming that I had mistreated her and that the world needed to know the truth about our relationship. As the blog gained traction, my life started to fall apart. Friends and family members began reaching out, concerned about the disturbing content they had seen. Some of them even accused me of being an abusive partner, despite knowing that this was far from the truth. I tried to explain my side of the story, but no one seemed willing to listen. The worst part was the comment section. Holly's followers were relentless, bombarding me with hateful messages and threats. They called me a monster, a manipulator, and even a predator. Some of them even went as far as to track down my workplace and bombard my employer with demands to have me fired. I had never felt so helpless and alone. I tried to reason with Holly, begging her to take the blog down, but she refused. She seemed to take a twisted pleasure in watching me suffer, reveling in the pain she was causing me. As the weeks turned into months, the situation only seemed to worsen. My once thriving social life had crumbled, and I found myself isolated and ostracized. I couldn't even go out in public without fear of being recognized and confronted by Holly's supporters. The worst part was the impact it had on my mental health. I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every notification on my phone, terrified of what new horror Holly had unleashed. I struggled to sleep, haunted by the thought of my private life being on display for the world to see. I tried to seek help, but no one seemed to take my situation seriously. Counselors and therapists would listen politely, but ultimately they couldn't do much to combat the relentless onslaught of online harassment. I felt trapped with no way out. Eventually, the stress and anxiety took a toll on my physical health as well. I started to develop stress-related physical symptoms like migraines and stomach issues. I found it increasingly difficult to focus on my work, and my performance began to suffer. The final straw came when Holly started contacting my employer directly, accusing me of misconduct and demanding that I be fired. I tried to explain the situation, but my boss was understandably concerned about the potential fallout. In the end, I was forced to resign, unable to bear the thought of losing my job due to Holly's vindictive actions. At this point, I felt like I had hit rock bottom. I had lost my job, my social life, and my sense of self-worth. The constant barrage of online harassment had taken a significant toll on my mental and physical well-being, and I did nowhere to turn. It was then that I decided to take drastic action. I knew that I couldn't continue living like this, constantly looking over my shoulder and fearing for my safety. So I made the difficult decision to leave my home and go into hiding. It's been several months since I made that choice, and the healing process has been slow and painful. I had to start over from scratch, rebuilding my life in a new city where no one knows my name. It's been challenging, to say the least, but I've been able to find solace in the anonymity and the distance from my past. Looking back, I still can't believe the extent of the damage that Holly has caused. Her blog has become a veritable goldmine of personal information, and her followers have shown no signs of relenting. I live in constant fear of being discovered, of having my new life torn apart by the relentless onslaught of online harassment. But I'm determined to move forward to reclaim my life and my sense of self-worth. I know that it won't be easy, but I'm taking it one day at a time, focusing on the things that I can control. I've sought professional help to cope with the trauma, and I'm slowly but surely rebuilding my support system. It's not the life I imagined for myself, but it's the one I have to live now. I've learned a hard lesson about the power of the internet and the lengths that a vindictive ex-partner will go to in order to seek revenge. But I'm not going to let Holly's actions define me. I'm going to keep fighting, keep moving forward, and ultimately reclaim my life. The healing process has been arduous, but I'm making progress. Some days are still consumed by anxiety about being discovered, but those days are fewer and farther between. I no longer compulsively check Holly's blog, though I'm sure she's still posting vitriol about me. I've stopped worrying what her supporters think of me. Their words may sting, but they don't control my life anymore. I've started opening up to new friends about my experience. It's still difficult to talk about, bringing up so many painful memories, but by sharing my story, I'm reclaiming my narrative. I'm no longer a character in Holly's twisted blog. I have my own voice again. While the scars still linger, I can feel my confidence coming back. I'm remembering who I am outside of that relationship, outside of the abuse. I have talents and dreams that Holly tried to take from me, but they're still here, waiting to be rediscovered. Some days my past still casts a shadow, but more and more I'm stepping into the light. I'm finding meaning and purpose again. I know there will be setbacks to come, but I have the tools to get through them now. I don't know if I'll ever stop looking over my shoulder, but I won't keep living in fear. This is my life and I'm taking it back. One day at a time, I'm healing, rebuilding, reclaiming my story, and nothing Holly says can take that away from me again. I still can't believe this is happening. It's been 3 months since I broke up with my ex, and I thought I had finally moved on. But now everything has come crashing down around me. It started with a strange email in my inbox. At first, I thought it was just spam. When I opened it, my heart sank. There were intimate videos of me, taken in my own home. Clips from our relationship, footage of us in our most private moments. I felt sick to my stomach, realizing that my ex must have hidden cameras in our apartment the entire time we were together. The email was from my ex, and they demanded that I meet their requests or they would release the videos publicly. I couldn't believe this was happening. I had trusted this person, and they had betrayed me in the most horrific way. The thought of those videos being out there for everyone to see was terrifying. I tried to reason with them, to plead for them to stop, but they refused. They wanted money, and they wanted me to do things for them. Things that I'm not comfortable even thinking about. I was trapped, held hostage by my own private life. The following weeks were a blur of anxiety and fear. I couldn't focus on anything else, constantly checking my email and phone, waiting for the next demand. My ex was relentless, sending more and more footage, taunting me, and making it clear that they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. I considered going to the police, but I was terrified of the consequences. What if they didn't take me seriously? What if the videos end up being released anyway? I felt powerless, completely at the mercy of my ex. The demands became more and more outrageous, and I found myself complying just to keep the videos from being shared. I drained my savings, hid things I'm ashamed of, all in an effort to keep my privacy intact. But it was never enough. My ex always wanted more. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next bombshell would drop. I couldn't sleep, my nerves were shot, and I was losing hope that this would ever end. Then, one horrible day, I received the email I had been dreading. My ex had followed through on their threats and released the videos. The moment I saw a link, my heart stopped. With trembling hands, I clicked on it and was taken to a CU website. Right there on the front page were numerous video thumbnails with my face on them. I felt like I might vomit or pass out. This was really happening. My worst fear had come true. My most private moments were now available for the whole world to see. I sat staring at the screen in disbelief and horror, trying to comprehend the magnitude of this violation. Over the next few days, I fluctuated between utter despair and complete rage. I was devastated that my ex could be so cruel as to do this to me. I was also furious and wanted to make them pay for destroying my life like this. But underneath those feelings was an overwhelming sense of shame and embarrassment. I felt exposed and degraded. It was bad enough that my ex had those videos in the first place, but now they were on public display like I was some star or reality TV character. I didn't know how I could ever face my family and friends again. I kept imagining them stumbling across those videos, their shock and disgust. It made me want to disappear off the face of the earth. For a while, I became reclusive, rarely leaving my apartment. I was paranoid that everyone who saw me would somehow know what had happened, that they would judge and ridicule me. I also lived in constant fear that my ex would strike again. I still had more footage that hadn't been released yet. The threat of more videos being uploaded hung over my head like a storm cloud. This went on for several agonizing weeks. I stopped going to work. I barely ate or slept. My mind was consumed with shame, fear, and fantasies of revenge. I felt like I was unraveling. Finally, I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. The videos were out there now, there was no changing that. But I could still take back control of my life. I forced myself to get out of bed and face the world again. I went to the police and reported everything. It felt empowering to stand up for myself after being at the mercy of my ex's cruelty for so long. The authorities managed to get the videos taken down from the original website, but of course the damage was already done. Copies of them continued to circulate online no matter how many times I had them removed. I also had to accept that I couldn't control what people thought about me or the situation. Those who cared about me offered their support once they learned the truth. As for everyone else, their opinions didn't matter. Restarting my life ended up being incredibly difficult, but also liberating. I moved to a new city where no one knew my history. I made new friends, found a new job. Slowly but surely, I was putting myself back together. Of course, the videos will always haunt me to some extent. Every once in a while, I still have panic attacks about them resurfacing, or I'll lay awake at night feeling retroactive shame. But most days I'm able to just focus on the present and building the life I want. I refuse to let my ex have any more power over me. They already took so much, but I won't let them take my future too. What happened will always be a part of my past, but it doesn't have to define my future. I'm so much more than those videos than what my ex tried to reduce me to, and it makes me feel strong and proud to realize that. My experience has given me empathy for others who have had their privacy violated like I did. I now volunteer for an organization that helps victims of revenge and cyber exploitation. It's my way of turning something horrific into something meaningful. If I can help even one person avoid going through what I did, it makes it feel like I regained some control back from my ex. So this is my story, my journey to reclaiming my life after the ultimate betrayal. What my ex did can never be justified or forgiven, but they failed in their effort to truly break me. I'm still healing every day, but I'm so much stronger now. I won't be reduced to a victim. I want to be an example for others that you can get your life back, even after the most shattering violations. No one should ever have to go through something like this, but those who do should know that there is life on the other side, even if you can't see it yet. You have the power to take your life back. It won't happen overnight. It's a process, one day at a time. It requires resilience and courage that you never knew you had. But you can do it. You are so much more than what happened to you. Don't let it take away your future, too. I still have hard days, of course. Days where the injustice of it all hits me again like a gut punch. But now I'm able to pick myself back up again. I remind myself of how far I've come. This experience showed me I'm stronger than I realized. And while the road forward won't be easy, I know deep down that I will be okay. My life is so much more than one violation, one trauma. So I hope by sharing my story, it can give others out there struggling the courage to start taking their own lives back too. You have survived the worst already. Now go out there and show the world and your ex just how unbreakable you really are. I thought I had finally moved on with my life after my messy breakup with my ex, Dina. It had been a few years and I had met someone new, Jessica. She was kind, caring, and we seemed to really click. I was happier than I'd been in a long time. But then strange things started happening. Jessica would come home from work looking upset, and when I asked her what was wrong, she would brush it off and say it was nothing. Over time, she became more distant and withdrawn. She seemed to be spending a lot of time on her phone, constantly texting someone. When I asked who she was talking to, she would get defensive and say it was just a new friend from work. I started to get suspicious, but I tried to push those feelings down. Jessica and I had such a good thing going. I didn't want to ruin it by being a paranoid, jealous partner. I told myself I was just being insecure and that I needed to trust her. One night, Jessica finally opened up to me. She said she had been talking to a new woman named Dina online and that they had really hit it off. She said Dina was going through a hard time and needed a supportive friend. My heart sank as soon as I heard that name. I asked Jessica if she knew anything about Dina's past, and she said no, that Dina had kept things vague. She said Dina seemed really nice and she enjoyed talking to her. I hesitated, not knowing if I should tell Jessica the truth about my ex. But I decided I had to. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I explained to Jessica that Dina was actually my ex-girlfriend, and that she was likely trying to manipulate our relationship. I told her about the tumultuous history we had, the lies, and the emotional abuse. Jessica was shocked and horrified. She couldn't believe she had been talking to my ex behind my back. At first, Jessica was completely distrustful of me. She felt betrayed that I hadn't been upfront about my past with Dina from the beginning. She said she needed some space to process everything. I was heartbroken, but I understood. I gave her the time and space she needed, hoping she would come around and realize I was telling her the truth. Over the next few weeks, Jessica's behavior became more and more erratic. She would get angry and accusatory towards me over the smallest things. She was constantly on her phone, texting Dina for hours on end. I could see the manipulation happening, but Jessica refused to believe me. She was convinced that I was the one with a hidden agenda, and that Dina was simply being a supportive friend. It got to the point where Jessica would barely speak to me, and when she did, it was to lash out and say hurtful things. I was losing her, and there was nothing I could do about it. Dina had wormed her way into our relationship and was tearing it apart from the inside. One day, I came home to find all of Jessica's things gone. She had moved out, telling me in a cold text message that she couldn't be with someone she couldn't trust. I was devastated. I had lost the woman I loved because of my vindictive ex-machinations. I tried to reach out to Jessica to beg her to see the truth, but she refused to respond. It was like she had completely cut me out of her life. Meanwhile, Dina continued to message and manipulate her, turning her further against me. I felt hopeless and powerless. I had done everything I could to save my relationship, but Dina's twisted schemes had won out in the end. Jessica was lost to me, and I had to face the reality that my ex had succeeded in destroying yet another one of my relationships. I can't lie, the whole ordeal left me feeling shattered and distrustful of ever opening myself up to love again. I thought I had moved on from Dina, but her presence had come back to haunt me in the worst way possible. I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart, wondering if I would ever be able to trust someone new again. This experience has taught me a hard lesson, that even when you think you've escaped the grasp of a toxic ex, they can find ways to worm their way back into your life and cause untold damage. It's a sobering reminder that sometimes the scars of a past relationship can never fully heal. All you can do is try to move forward and hope that you don't encounter another manipulative ex who is determined to destroy your happiness. I know I will carry the scars of this ordeal forever, but I also know I cannot let it harden my heart completely. As difficult as it may be, I have to remain open to the possibility of finding love again someday. I may approach it more cautiously, but I refuse to believe that Dina's cruelty has robbed me of ever experiencing true happiness with someone new. Her actions have hurt me deeply, but I cannot allow her to dictate my capacity to trust and care for someone fully. One day, when I'm ready, I hope to meet someone who will help me write a new chapter, one where the ghosts of toxic relationships past don't haunt me anymore. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding and becoming whole again. It's a long road, but one I'm determined to walk down, no matter how difficult the terrain may be. It started slowly at first. A picture gone from the mantel, a shirt missing from my closet. Small things that are easy to overlook and explain away. I figured they'd turn up somewhere eventually. Or maybe I misplaced them and just didn't remember. But then more things started to disappear. My favorite coffee mug, the stuffed animal he won me at the fair on our third date, the bottle of perfume he said reminded him of our first kiss. Bit by bit, pieces of my life with him were vanishing. I tried to ignore it at first. We had a bad breakup, full of angry words and slammed doors. He was hurt and bitter at the end. I told myself he probably just kept a few mementos when he moved out. But the missing items started to add up, and the sinking feeling in my gut told me something more sinister was at stake. It all came to a head the night I got home and saw the empty spot on the bookshelf where our photo album once sat. The album chronicling our entire relationship, from that first shy date to our engagement party just months before the big blowout that ended it all. My heart dropped. This was no simple oversight. He had been in my home, stealing away every artifact of our life together. But why? What could he want with a handful of trinkets and old photographs? That's when I realized the horrible truth. He was building a shrine. In his grief and anger, he was reconstructing the past we shared. Each pilfered item a sacred offering on an altar dedicated to our doomed romance. I imagined him sitting alone at night, surrounded by the pieces of me he had claimed, clinging to ghosts that I was trying desperately to outrun. The violation I felt shook me, but it was replaced almost instantly by fear. He wasn't just wallowing in the past, he was hunting mementos like trophies. And if he had breached the sanctity of my home once, he would surely do it again. I saw then that his obsessive collection would never be complete, not while I still possessed a single reminder of our life together. I considered going to the police, but I had no proof, and what could they do besides file a report for the minor theft of a few personal effects? There were no threats or signs of imminent danger, just my word against his, and the accusations of a jealous ex trying to cause trouble for her former lover. So I said nothing, but I remained vigilant, taking stock of everything I owned that held meaning from our years together. I stopped leaving the house for long stretches, afraid to give them opportunity to sneak back in and take another piece of me. At night, I lay restless, ears pricked for any unusual sound, wondering if he would eventually try coming for me, not just my things. Weeks passed without incident, and my paranoia began to subside. Perhaps he had gotten it out of his system, found enough relics to build his altar and make peace with our demise. But then I noticed my diary was missing from its hiding spot, and all sense of security vanished. He had been here again. Still searching, still obsessed. Still stealing away the last shards of the girl I used to be, the girl shaped by his love. Who knew it would ever stop? Even if I gathered everything left of our memories and offered it freely, would it satisfy this compulsion? Or would he start taking pieces of me next? My hair, my clothes, my essence distilled into some elixir in a vial. I had to escape to shriv the ties binding me to this phantom love turned haunting. So I packed only the essentials and left that night, just the clothes on my back and a small bag. No mementos, nothing to tie me to the past. I drove all night, putting miles between me and a home I now feared was not mine alone. I rented a small apartment in a town where no one knew my name, the first step in leaving behind the girl I was for the girl I hoped to become. It has been months now, and my life is slowly coming together. I have a new job, new friends. I even met someone new, though we are taking it very slow. He seems like a nice guy so far, but after what I've been through, I am wary of rushing into anything. At night, I still lay awake sometimes, wondering if my ex is out there even now, searching for me and the pieces left of us. But I cannot live in fear of ghosts. All I can do is keep moving forward and hope that wherever he is, someday he will find a way to let go too. I used to have nightmares about him finding me, showing up at my door demanding I go with him. In the dreams, he would rage and cry, torn between love and hate, not willing to accept that we are over. I would back away, pleading with him to move on, only to have him grab my wrist, insisting I belonged to him. Those dreams always ended with me jerking awake in a panic, heart racing. But the nightmares have faded now. I take that as a good sign that my mind is learning to let go of the fear. I still don't feel completely safe. I doubt I ever will if he is still out there consumed by his obsession. Yet I cannot cease living in order to appease his ghosts. Sometimes I think about getting a restraining order, just in case he ever discovers where I am. But even that feels like allowing him to retain control. For now, all I can do is remain cautious while forging this new life. My new town is small and friendly. I rent a little cottage on the edge of town, with big windows that let in lots of sunshine. At the coffee shop where I work, I've made some casual friends among the regulars. They know me only as I am now, not who I used to be. It's nice to just be myself, without my past looming over me. A boyfriend understands when I want to take things slow. He's very kind and patient. I do wonder sometimes if I should tell him the truth, explain why I am so wary of attachments. But it still feels too fresh, too vulnerable to expose. For now, all he knows is that I got out of a bad relationship and needed a fresh start. It all started a few months after the breakup. My ex and I had dated for about a year before things fell apart. The relationship had its ups and downs, but I never could have imagined the twisted nightmare that was to come. At first, it was just little things, a strange feeling that someone had been in my apartment, or the occasional flickering of my laptop camera light that I brushed off as a glitch. But then the messages started, grainy, intimate video clips of me in my own home, going about my daily life, showering, changing clothes, moments I had shared with my ex in private. The messages were always the same: do what I say, or I release these. My heart would race every time a new one came through. Panic set in as I realized the full scope of the invasion of my privacy. How long had these cameras been there, capturing my most vulnerable moments? The thought made me sick. I confronted my ex, bidding them to stop to delete the videos. But they only laughed, reveling in the power they held over me. The demands started simple enough: money, gifts, little favors. Comply, and the videos stayed private. Refuse, and they threatened to share the clips with my friends, family, even my employer. I was trapped, terrified of the consequences if I didn't give in. So I did. Time and time again, I gave in to their twisted requests, hating myself a little more each time. It went on for months. I lived in constant fear, jumping at every notification on my phone. I became a shell of my former self, all my energy consumed by trying to placate my vengeful ex. They seemed to take sadistic pleasure in my suffering, pushing me further and further until I felt completely powerless. Then the demands escalated. They wanted me to break off contact with certain friends, to end relationships with people they were jealous of. When I refused, they threatened to release the videos to those very people. I was backed into a corner, forced to comply or risk ruining the lives of those I cared about. The final straw came when they demanded I quit my job. "If you don't, I'll send these to your boss," they taunted. I begged them to stop, to have mercy, but they showed none. Desperate, I had no choice but to resign, leaving me financially vulnerable and even more at their mercy. I reached a breaking point. I couldn't keep living this way, constantly terrified and manipulated. Something had to be done. So I gathered my courage and went to the police, hoping they could put a stop to this nightmare. The officers listened patiently as I recounted the whole twisted ordeal, showing them the incriminating messages and video clips. To my relief, they took it seriously, assuring me they would launch a full investigation. A sense of cautious hope began to fill me. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally be free of his torment. But that hope was short-lived. Just a few days later, I received a chilling message from my ex. "I know you went to the cops. If you don't do exactly as I say, I'll release everything." My blood ran cold. They had found out, and now I was in even greater danger. Terrified of the consequences, I had no choice but to comply with their new, even more outrageous demands. I was utterly powerless, trapped in a living nightmare of my ex's devising. Each time I gave in, I felt a piece of myself die. This was no longer about the videos. It was about my ex asserting complete control, breaking me down until there was nothing left. Months passed in this agonizing cycle, then I began to lose all hope. My ex seemed to have eyes and ears everywhere, anticipating my every move. I couldn't trust anyone, couldn't confide in the people who cared about me for fear of the consequences. I was utterly alone, drowning in a sea of shame and despair. Then, one day, everything changed. I was scrolling through my phone when I stumbled upon a news article. My ex had been arrested. Apparently, someone else had also come forward with evidence against them, leading to a full-scale investigation. My ex was facing charges for stalking, extortion, and invasion of privacy. The relief I felt was indescribable. After so long living in constant terror, I finally had a glimmer of freedom. The videos were seized as evidence, and I was assured they would not be released. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life to reclaim the sense of security and autonomy that had been stolen from me. It hasn't been easy, of course. The trauma of what I endured lingers, and I still jump at unexpected noises or the sight of a camera. But with the support of friends, family, and a therapist, I'm learning to heal, to move forward and not let my ex's twisted actions define me. Looking back, I still can't believe the extent of the violation I experienced. The thought that someone I trusted could do something so cruel and calculate is truly horrifying. But I'm determined not to let it break me. I'm a survivor, and I'll be damned if I let my ex win. This is my story, a cautionary tale of the dangers of the digital age and the lengths a vengeful ex will go to maintain control. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that we must be vigilant, always aware of the vulnerabilities technology can create. But we must also have the courage to fight back, to reclaim our power in the face of such a violation. I'm still on that journey, but I know I'm not alone. And that, more than anything, gives me the strength to keep moving forward, no matter what challenges lie ahead. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I first saw the pictures pop up on social media. My ex and their new perfect partner, looking blissfully happy together. My stomach dropped and I felt that familiar anxiety rise up in my chest. I knew this day would come, but I wasn't prepared for the flood of emotions that hit me. We had broken up 6 months ago after 2 years together. 2 years of highs and lows, of promises and manipulation. I had loved them deeply, but the relationship became toxic. The control, jealousy, gaslighting, it all became too much. I had to get out for my own sanity. They hadn't taken it well when I ended things. There were tearful pleas to stay, angry accusations of betrayal, desperate attempts to win me back. It was clear they weren't ready to let go. I held my ground and blocked their number. I took the breakup hard those first few months. The withdrawal from an abusive relationship is intense. I missed them every day and constantly questioned if I had made the right choice. But as time passed, the pain dulled. I regained my confidence and independence. I was healing. Seeing those smiling pictures threatened to undo all my progress. My ex looked so smug with their arm wrapped around their new partner. The captions gushed about how perfect they were together. How they were so understanding, so loving, so different from the exes in their past. I knew exactly what they were doing. They were flaunting this new relationship to hurt me, to make me jealous. Just another manipulation. Over the next few weeks, more loved-up photos appeared. Snapshots of romantic dinners out, cuddling on the couch, lavish gifts. Just because. Each post was another dagger to my heart, but I couldn't look away. I became obsessed with watching this new relationship unfold. Then one night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a new partner reaching out to me. They had gotten my contact info from a mutual friend. They needed to talk to someone who understood what they were going through. At first, I was hesitant to engage, but as their messages continued, I realized this person was now stuck in the same abusive cycle I had just escaped. The extravagant dates, the flattering social media posts, it was all a facade. Behind closed doors, my ex was slowly exerting more control over them. The subtle criticisms about their looks and interests. The guilt trips if they wanted to spend time with friends. The gaslighting and emotional manipulation when confronted with questionable behavior. It was all straight from my ex's playbook. This poor person was suffering just as I had suffered. They apologized for the hurtful posts, confessing my ex had pressured them into it as a way to make me jealous. Now they felt trapped, terrified of what would happen if they tried to leave. My ex had threatened to ruin their reputation or even harm them if they betrayed this perfect romance to the world. My heart broke for the stranger as they recounted the details of psychological torment they had endured over the past few months. I saw now how my ex had moved straight from me to their next target without a second thought. How they were able to so easily duplicate the same abusive patterns in a new relationship. I did my best to offer support and advice to this person. I told them the manipulation and threats were not normal or acceptable. that they deserved better. I sent resources for domestic violence survivors. I encouraged them to safely exit the relationship however possible. I made it clear none of this was their fault. In the end, I don't know if they managed to get away. Their messages stopped suddenly one day. I can only hope they found the courage and strength to break free as I did. My ex never changed. They found a new supply to feed their abusive tendencies. And when that relationship stops serving their needs, they will move on to the next vulnerable target. The cycle continues endlessly. As for me, this experience reminded me of how far I've come since that toxic relationship. The woman crying over those happy couple photos months ago was not me anymore. I saw the manipulation for what it was. I felt empowered by using my pain to help someone else. I was no longer a victim. Some scars remain, but I am healing. I am wiser. I am stronger. And I will never let anyone control me like that again. The months after our breakup were dark. I missed them every day, even though I knew being apart was the right choice. The manipulation had become too much to bear, but walking away from someone you love is never easy. I spent those early days mired in doubt and pain, endlessly questioning if I had made a mistake. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I cared to admit. Letting go of the dreams and plans we had made together hurt deeply. My heart was ravaged by grief. But gradually the ache lessened. Slowly, steadily, I regained my independence and confidence. I'd nurtured neglected friendships, pursued new hobbies, and remembered who I was outside of the relationship. The fog lifted, and I saw our dynamic for what it was: unhealthy, stifling, and toxic. Just as I felt myself healing and moving forward, those smiling photos appeared. My ex flaunting their new perfect partner, blatantly trying to inspire jealousy and hurt. It was a dagger to my progress, reopening wounds I thought had closed. I knew their motivations instantly. The gushing captions about how they'd found their soulmate. It was a show for my benefit. Another attempt to manipulate me from afar. Part of me wanted to rip into them for inflicting this pain, but I restrained myself and simply blocked the posts. Then came the messages from the new partner, confiding their fears about my ex's behavior behind closed doors. The barrage of criticism, control, and emotional abuse. How trapped and helpless they felt. My heart sank, realizing another was now suffering as I had suffered. I offered what I could: validation, resources, empowerment. I knew the manipulation intimately. My ex had shifted seamlessly to a new target, duplicating the same torment. The cycle would continue endlessly until someone found the courage to walk away, as I had. The experience crystallized my growth since the breakup. I saw the facade for what it was and felt only pity for the next victim caught in the web of lies. Helping them made me feel empowered, no longer a wounded casualty. My scars remain, but I'm healing. I broke free of toxicity and reclaimed myself. And though the path awaits twists and turns, I move forward with hard-won wisdom. I cannot change or control my ex's damaging patterns, but I can control my own responses, remain true to myself, and leave the manipulation far behind. The woman crying over those photos is not me anymore. She was trapped in an abyss, doubting her reality. I have climbed out, gaining perspective and strength. I'm wiser and more resilient for the hardships endured. At times, the ghosts of pain, doubt, and grief still haunt. But I face them now with courage, reminded of how far I've come. The darkness could not consume me. No one has power over my self-worth and freedom again. This is my life, my journey. I walk forward boldly, unashamed of all I've survived. I never thought I'd be the one to experience something like this. It all started a few months ago, after a messy breakup with my ex-partner. We had been together for years, and I truly thought they were the one. But things took a dark turn, and I found myself alone, heartbroken, and afraid. At first, it was just little things. My ex would send me random messages, sometimes begging me to take them back, other times hurling insults and threats. I tried to ignore it, to move on with my life, but they wouldn't let up. Then the hacking started. My ex somehow managed to get into all of my social media accounts, posting disturbing content and sending strange messages to my friends and family pretending to be me. It was like they had become a completely different person, obsessed with making my life a living hell. I changed all my passwords, but it didn't matter. They always seemed to find a way in, constantly one step ahead of me. They knew all my secrets, all my vulnerabilities, and they used that knowledge to systematically isolate me from everyone I cared about. My friends and loved ones started to receive these bizarre messages, and they didn't know what to think. Some of them even believed it was really me, and they started to distance themselves, unsure of what was going on. I tried to explain, but it was no use. My ex had turned them against me. Slowly but surely, I found myself becoming more and more alone. I couldn't trust anyone, not even my own family. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next attack would come. It was a living nightmare, and I felt completely powerless to stop it. The worst part was the constant sense of dread and uncertainty. I never knew what my ex was going to do next, and that made it impossible to relax or feel safe. They would pop up at the most unexpected times, sending me threatening messages or even showing up at my doorstep, demanding that I take them back. It got to the point where I couldn't even leave my own home without feeling anxious and on edge. I stopped going out with friends, stopped going to work, and just retreated into my own little bubble, hoping that if I kept a low profile, my ex would eventually get bored and move on. But they never did. They were relentless, constantly finding new ways to torment me and make my life a living hell. I felt like I was slowly losing my mind, constantly wondering if I was going to be the next victim of their twisted game. It's been months now, and I'm still trapped in this nightmare. My ex has managed to isolate me from everyone I know, and I've never felt more alone. I'm constantly on edge, never knowing when the next attack will come. I've tried reaching out for help, but it's like no one believes me. They all think I'm just being paranoid or overreacting. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I'm trapped in a never-ending nightmare. There's no way out. My ex has taken everything from me, my friends, my family, my sense of security. I'm barely hanging on, and I don't know how much longer I can keep going. All I know is that I can't let them win. I have to find a way to break free from this nightmare to reclaim my life and my identity. But it's not going to be easy. I'm scared of what my ex might do, scared of the consequences of standing up to them. But I have to try for my own sanity and for the sake of the life I once had. This is my story, a cautionary tale of what can happen when a relationship goes horribly wrong. I never thought I'd be the one to experience something like this, but here I am, fighting for my life and my freedom. I hope that by sharing my story, I can warn others and help them avoid the same fate. I've tried everything I can think of to get my ex to stop. I've changed my phone number, moved to a new apartment across town, deleted all my social media accounts. But somehow they always find me again. It's like I'm trapped in an endless game of cat and mouse, always looking over my shoulder, wondering when they'll pop up again. The police haven't been much help either. They keep telling me that until my ex makes more overt threats or actually tries to physically harm me, there's not much they can do. Never mind the endless harassment and psychological torture I've had to endure for months on end. My friends and family don't understand why I can't just get over it and move on with my life. They think I'm exaggerating or being paranoid, but they don't know what it's like. The constant dread, the violation of having your most private thoughts and secrets weaponized against you. My ex knows me better than anyone, and they're using that knowledge to systematically destroy me. Sometimes I think about changing my identity and starting over somewhere new, but I know my ex would just find me again. They're obsessed with control and with making me suffer. Running away would only spur them to redouble their efforts at tracking me down. So I'm stuck in limbo, unable to move forward, but terrified to stay in one place for too long. I alternate between anger, fear, and sadness. Anger at my ex for putting me through this hell, fear of what they'll do next, and sadness for the relationship we once had, now twisted into something unrecognizable. I wonder if I'll ever be free of this nightmare. My ex has taken so much from me already. Will I ever get back the life I had before? Will I ever feel safe and happy again? Or will they continue haunting me, no matter where I go or what I do to escape? Part of me knows I should try to be strong, to not let my ex break me, but the relentless torment has left me shattered, like a shipwrecked sailor clinging to the last piece of drifting trash. I don't know how much fight I have left in me. But giving up would mean letting my ex win once and for all, and I refuse to give them that satisfaction. They may have backed me into a corner, but I'm not down for the count yet. I guess I'll just have to dig deep and try to find the resilience to keep enduring this nightmare, even if I'm running on fumes. My ex wants me isolated, afraid, and broken, but I'm not going to hand them the keys to my sanity that easily. Something inside me still rages against what they're trying to do. I'm scared, exhausted, and alone, but I'm not giving up. Not yet. So for now, I survive day by day, moment by moment. I may feel powerless in the face of my ex's relentless torment, but I'm still breathing. My heart's still beating. And as long as that continues, I still have a fighting chance to regain control over my life. It all started a few months after I broke up with my ex, Mela. At first, it was just little coincidences. I'd be out running errands and spot her car in the parking lot, or I'd be at the grocery store and see her down the aisle. I tried to write it off, telling myself it was a small town and these things happen. But then the sightings became more frequent. I'd be at the gym and there she'd be on the treadmill across the room. I'd stop for coffee on my way to work, and I'd catch a glimpse of her leaving the very same cafe. It was unsettling, to say the least. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was following me, or at the very least, showing up in the same places by pure chance. I started paying closer attention, trying to pinpoint a pattern. Was she going to the same places I was at the same times? Or was I simply hyper aware of her presence now, noticing her when I wouldn't have before? The uncertainty was driving me crazy. One day, I decided to test my theory. I went to the mall, a place I rarely visited, and sure enough, there she was, browsing in a store just a few doors down from where I was. I quickly ducked out, my heart racing. This couldn't be a coincidence. She had to be following me. The next few weeks were a nightmare. I became paranoid, constantly checking over my shoulder and changing out my routine. But no matter what I did, Mila seemed to always be nearby. I'd see her car in the parking lot at work or spot her walking in the street as I was driving home. It was like she had a sixth sense, always knowing exactly where I was going to be. Finally, I decided I had to confront her. I waited until I saw her at the grocery store one evening, and I approached her, my heart pounding. "Okay, what's going on?" I demanded. "Why do I keep running into you everywhere I go?" She looked surprised, but then a smile slowly spread across her face. "Oh, you've noticed, have you?" she said calmly. "I was wondering how long it would take you to catch on." I stared at her, dumbfounded. Catch on to what? I asked, a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. "I've been tracking your movements," she said casually, as if she were discussing the weather. "I installed a GPS tracker on your car a few weeks after we broke up. I know everywhere you go all the time." I felt sick. How could you do that? I whispered, the horror of the situation sinking in. "That's illegal, not to mention completely insane." She just shrugged. "I couldn't accept that we were over," she said. "I needed to know what you were up to, where you were going. I couldn't just let you disappear from my life." I backed away, my hands shaking. "Stay away from me," I warned. "I'm going to the police." She laughed. "Good luck with that," she said. "You'll never be able to prove anything. And even if you do, I'll just find another way to keep tabs on you. You can't get rid of me that easily." I hurried out of the store, my mind racing. I couldn't believe this was happening. How could she have done this to me? And what was I going to do? I spent the next few days in a state of constant anxiety, jumping at every sound and checking my surroundings constantly. I started taking different routes to work, parking in different spots, and even leaving my car at home and taking public transportation. But no matter what I did, I still felt like I was being watched. Finally, I decided to take drastic action. I went to a local electronics store and had them do a full sweep of my car and phone, searching for any hidden tracking devices. And sure enough, they found a GPS tracker hidden under the dashboard of my car. I was shaken, but also relieved to have concrete evidence of Mila's stalking. I immediately went to the police and filed a report. They were able to trace the tracker back to Mila and issued a restraining order, warning her to stay away from me or face legal consequences. For a while, it seemed to work. I didn't see Mila anywhere, and I felt like I could finally breathe again. But then, about a month later, the sighting started up again. I'd be out for a run or grabbing a coffee, and there she'd be, lurking in the background. I confronted her again, demanding to know how she was still tracking me. She just smirked and said, "I have my ways." Turns out she had hacked into my phone and installed a hidden tracking app, one that was virtually undetectable. I was at my wit's end. I tried everything, changing my phone, disabling location services, even leaving my phone at home sometimes. But no matter what I did, Mila always seemed to know where I was. It's been over a year now, and I'm still living in constant fear. I'm always looking over my shoulder, wondering when and where Mila will show up next. I've had to change my daily routine, my habits, even my hobbies, all in an effort to throw her off. But she's relentless, a shadow that never goes away. I don't know what to do. The police say there's not much else they can do unless she physically threatens me or violates the restraining order, and I'm starting to lose hope that I'll ever be able to escape her. She's like a ghost, haunting my every step, a constant reminder of the nightmare I'm living. I just want my life back. I want to feel safe and secure without constantly looking over my shoulder. But as long as Mila is out there tracking my every move, I don't know if that will ever be possible. I'm trapped, a prisoner in my own life, and I don't know how to break free. I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked through the front door. The air felt different, somehow a touch colder, a hint of an unfamiliar scent. But I brushed it off, attributing the changes to my own paranoia. After all, I had good reason to be on edge. It had been 3 months since I broke up with my ex, Sarah. The breakup was messy, full of tears and shouting matches. I thought I made it clear that I never wanted to see her again. Apparently, she didn't get the message. I changed the locks right away, but somehow she kept finding her way back in. I would come home to rearrange furniture, missing items or strange markings on the walls. Once, I even caught a glimpse of her fleeing out the back door as I pulled into the driveway. Each time my heart would race and my palms would sweat, the fear of her presence overwhelming me. This time, the signs were more ominous. A faint floral scent lingered in the air, one I recognized as Sarah's favorite perfume. I scanned the room, my eyes darting around, searching for any other disturbances. Everything seemed to be in its place, but the sense of unease refused to subside. Tentatively, I made my way upstairs, dreading what I might find. As I pushed open the bedroom door, my breath caught in my throat. There, sitting neatly on my pillow, was a single red rose. A small handwritten note was propped up against the stem, the elegant script taunting me. "I miss you," it read, the words etching themselves into my mind. I felt sick to my stomach, my hands trembling as I crumpled the note and tossed it aside. She had been here in my home while I was gone. The thought of her, prowling through my private space, made my skin crawl. I quickly checked the rest of the house, searching for any other signs of her presence. The bathroom was untouched, and the closet appeared undisturbed. But when I pulled open the top drawer of my dresser, I let out a gasp. Nestled among my socks and underwear was a small, leather-bound journal. I knew it wasn't mine. The cover was embossed with Sarah's initials. Hand shaking, I flipped it open, my eyes scanning the pages. Scrawled in the familiar handwriting were pages upon pages of journal entries, each one more disturbing than the last. I can't stop thinking about him. I miss his touch, his laugh, the way he used to hold me. I just want him back. I need him back. I saw him today, walking down the street with some woman. They looked so happy together. It should be by his side, not her. I have to find a way to get him back. I went to the house again last night. He still hasn't changed the locks. It was so easy to slip in to be surrounded by his things. I left him a little surprise on his pillow. I hope he knows I'm still here waiting for him. I slammed the journal shut, my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah had been obsessing over me, prowling around my home, and I had no idea. The thought of her, lurking in the shadows, watching my every move, made me feel utterly exposed and vulnerable. I needed to get out of this house to find someplace safe. Frantically, I grabbed my keys and my wallet, my mind racing as I hurried out the door. I couldn't stay here, not with the knowledge that Sarah could waltz in at any moment. As I pulled out of the driveway, I scanned the street, half expecting to see her watching from the shadows. But the neighborhood was quiet, the only movement coming from a few joggers and the occasional passing car. I drove aimlessly for a while, in a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. Where could I go that she wouldn't find me? I considered calling the police, but the thought of involving the authorities made me hesitate. What if she retaliated? What if she came after me again, even more unstable and determined than before? Eventually, I ended up at a small motel in the outskirts of town. It was a seedy-looking place, but it would have to do for now. I rented a room, double-checking the locks and drawing the curtains tightly shut. As I settled onto the bed, my mind continued to race. What was I going to do? Sarah had clearly lost her mind, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go to get me back. I couldn't keep running forever, and I couldn't stay holed up in this motel room indefinitely. I needed to find a way to stop her, to regain control of my life. But the thought of confronting her, of facing her obsession and rage, terrified me. I had no idea what she was capable of, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was completely powerless against her. As I lay there in the darkness, the weight of my situation pressing down on me, I couldn't help but wonder, When would this nightmare finally end? How long would I have to live looking over my shoulder, constantly worried that Sarah might pop up again? I tossed and turned, unable to get comfortable on the lumpy mattress. Every little creak or rustle made me jolt upright, convinced she had found me somehow. After hours spent in fitful half-sleep, I watched the first rays of dawn creak through the broken blinds. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally drained. But I knew I couldn't hide here forever. I needed to take back control. After a quick, scalding shower, I steeled my resolve. I was going to end this once and for all. Checking out of the motel, I headed back across town, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. I pulled up outside the small house Sarah and I had once shared, my heart hammering in my chest. Then, taking a deep breath, I marched up to the front door and pounded my fist against it. "Sarah," I shouted. "I know you're in there. Come out here now." For several long moments, there was silence. Then I heard the click of the lock turning and the door creaked open. There stood Sarah, wearing an oversized sweater and leggings, her hair pulled back messily. She looked surprised to see me. "Why are you here?" she asked softly. "I'm here to tell you that this ends today," I said firmly. "The breaking in, the stalking, the creepy notes. It all stops now." Sarah's eyes widened innocently. "Breaking in. Stalking? I don't know what you're talking about." I scowled, not falling for her act. "Don't play dumb. I know you've been sneaking into my house and going through my things, but it's over now. If I catch you anywhere near me or my home again, I'm going straight to the police." For a moment, Sarah just stared at me silently. Then her expression hardened, her eyes narrowing. "You can't keep me away," she hissed. "I'll always find a way back to you. Always." With that, she slammed the door in my face. I stood there, shaken but resolute. I had said what needed to be said. Now I could only hope that my warning would stick, and Sarah would finally leave me. As I walked back to my car, I felt the weight on my shoulders lift slightly. The matter wasn't fully settled, but it was a start. With time and perseverance, I could take back my life. And someday soon, I hoped, the nightmare would finally end. It started out subtly enough that I didn't think much of it at first. A small bouquet of flowers delivered to my doorstep, a gift card to my favorite coffee shop arriving in the mail. I figured they were tokens of appreciation from friends or family, so I happily accepted them without questioning where they came from. Things escalated when I came home one day to find a brand new iPhone waiting on my kitchen counter. An anonymous note claimed it was an upgrade for me, though I never shared my cell phone information with anyone. Unease crept in, but I still tried to justify it as a generous surprise from someone who cared about me. That illusion was shattered when I walked out to my car the next morning and found the dents and scratches that had riddled the exterior for years were now completely fixed. The auto body shop didn't know who had authorized or paid for the repairs. I finally had to accept that someone was orchestrating unwanted improvements to my life from the shadows. My suspicions were confirmed when I stopped by the bank and learned an anonymous donor had wired a staggering sum into my account. The money could have paid off my student loans, credit card debt, and then some, but accepting it meant letting this phantom benefactor further infiltrate my life. I refused the transaction and closed the account. That's when the trickle of gifts became a flood. My mailbox overflowed with purchases I never authorized. Designer clothes and jewelry I would never wear arrived daily. One morning I woke up to find a Tesla parked outside my apartment when I had never owned anything more luxurious than a used Corolla. With each new gift, an unspoken expectation seemed to hang in the air. Gratitude, obedience, dependence. I knew then the sender's true aim was control, not generosity. This wasn't a secret admirer. It was a stalker trying to worm their way into my world through manipulation and money. My refusal to embrace these offerings appeared to frustrate my anonymous benefactor. The hints started coming in more forceful ways. Once, returning from work utterly exhausted, I was shocked to find my apartment had been completely cleaned while I was gone. The fact that someone had been in my private space without permission made my skin crawl. Yet the message came through loud and clear. "Let me back into your life or I'll find a way in whether you like it or not." Even more invasive were the deliveries of prescription medications I never asked for, ones that implied this person somehow had access to my private medical records. I immediately disposed of the pills, terrified of the implication that I was being watched, studied, targeted. The breaches became more personal as time passed. An unfamiliar laptop appeared on my bed, sporting a slideshow of photos I had taken but never shared with anyone. Romantic love letters addressed to me started showing up in my mailbox, overwrought declarations supposedly penned by a secret admirer. I knew the flowery prose and careful penmanship could only belong to one person from my past. It all became devastatingly clear the day I found a photo of my ex and I, taken years ago when we had been deeply in love. Framed and hanging on my living room wall, I knew for certain it had not been there the night before. The picture brought back painful memories of arguments, tears, the immense relief I felt when we finally parted ways for good. But the violation of having this unwelcome memento thrust uninvited into my private space sent me over the edge. I marched down to the police station that very day and filed for a restraining order, bringing along the accumulating evidence that I was being stalked and harassed. The unwanted gifts ended immediately, though the paranoia lingered for months. I eventually moved apartments to feel safe again, treating that tainted space like a crime scene to escape. For a long time, I tensed up at the slightest unusual occurrence. A distant engine cut out at night, footsteps overhead, a ringing phone with no caller ID. But time and distance gradually reduced those reflexes. Still, I remain wary of overly generous gestures from nameless strangers. I know now such kindness often comes at an unspoken cost, not just money or gifts in return, but independence, security, and trust. True benefactors don't hide behind anonymity or keep tally of favors owed and due. They give freely, ask nothing, and respect boundaries. Anything less arouses suspicion in me now, as well it should for anyone who has lived through such an unsettling ordeal. In hindsight, there were a few red flags early on in my relationship that hinted at the obsessive, controlling behavior to come. The extravagant dates he planned despite my preferences for low-key activities. The chance meetings arranged so he could bump into me unexpectedly around town. The way he brooded when I wanted an evening to just hang out with friends. I realize now I mistook his attentiveness for affection, his persistence for passion. But there is a fine line between devotion and obsession, and he crossed it in ways that still give me chills. The gifts that once seemed thoughtful souvenirs of a man in love I now recognize as surveillance tools he used to infiltrate every corner of my life. What scares me most looking back is how gradually it escalated. Like a frog in slowly heating water, I didn't realize the danger until I was fully immersed in it. That is why I now keep an eye out for those isolated red flags. The extra copy of a key just in case, the casual jokes about tracking my phone, the chance run-ins a bit too often to be accidental. They seem harmless at first, but left unchecked can boil over into utter loss of autonomy. I don't regret walking away when I did, but I do wish I had trusted those initial instincts that told me something was off. Instead, I rationalized, made excuses, and let my judgment become clouded, allowing the situation to escalate further. Now I make a point to listen to my intuition when something doesn't feel right, no matter how seemingly small. We all must learn to recognize when admiration has curdled into something more insidious. It all started a few months after my breakup with Alex. We had been together for years, but things went downhill fast near the end. The arguments got nasty, the accusations flew, and by the time it was over, there was no civility left between us, just bitterness, hurt, and anger on both sides. I thought I had moved on and was ready to put it all behind me, but little did I know, Alex was just getting started. The first sign of trouble came when strange friend requests started popping up on my social media from accounts I didn't recognize. The profile pictures were generic stock images or emoji, and the usernames were random jumbles of letters and numbers. At first, I just ignored them, assuming they were bots or spam accounts. But then the messages started coming in. These accounts would send me bizarre, vaguely threatening messages. They'd say things like, "I know what you did," or "Your lies will catch up with you." Most alarming were the ones that mentioned obscure details about my life that only someone close to me would know. It didn't take long to realize these fake accounts were Alex doing. Soon it was a barrage of follow requests and messages from new fake accounts every day. And it didn't stop there. These accounts began commenting on all my posts, interacting with my friends, and infiltrating my social circles. I started noticing my real friends acting distant and cold towards me. When I asked what was up, they'd make vague references to things I'd supposedly said or done that didn't make any sense. That's when I realized Alex had been using the fake accounts to spread vicious rumors and lies about me and my friends. It was an insidious campaign of social disruption. The fake accounts would pose as acquaintances of mine and send slanderous messages about me to all my friends and connections. They'd make up cruel gossip, embarrassing stories, and destructive half-truths designed to ruin my reputation and turn people against me. And it was working. My friends were starting to believe I was some kind of malicious, manipulative monster. Alex even used the fake accounts to cause drama and infighting within my friend group. They pretend to be various friends of mine and message others, starting arguments and stirring up bitterness between them. As a result, I found myself increasingly isolated as my friends split into factions and turned on each other. I felt like I was living in paranoid nightmare. I didn't know who I could trust anymore. Every notification sent a spike of anxiety through my chest. I stayed awake at night wondering what kind of viral slander Alex would cook up next. I was constantly analyzing my remaining friendships, looking for signs they'd turned on me thanks to Alex's mind games. The worst part was there was nothing I could do to stop it. Blocking the accounts did nothing since Alex just created new ones endlessly. And I had no way to prove these accounts were really Alex behind the scenes. I was powerless, forced to watch helplessly as my reputation got dragged through the mud. For months, this relentless psychological warfare went on. The gaslighting and social isolation left me a hollow shell of my former self. I withdrew into myself, afraid to interact with anyone lest they had already been poisoned against me. Old friends would give me the cold shoulder in public, having believed God knows what about me. In a matter of months, Alex had systematically destroyed the social life I had built for years. The chronic isolation and paranoia left me depressed and anxious, struggling just to get through each day. I kept hoping Alex would eventually tire of tormenting me, but the fake accounts and slander never let up. To this day, I'm still putting my life back together and trying to move past the trauma, but the damage runs deep. I find it hard to make new friends or trust anyone fully because I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Any small conflict with a friend immediately sends me into a panic, terrified that Alex has gotten to them. Living with that kind of lingering hypervigilance is exhausting. What Alex did to me was a form of psychological abuse, plain and simple. They may have laid a hand on me, but the emotional damage they inflicted was no less severe. The feeling of being stalked and harassed in your own social circles is utterly suffocating. You feel violated, betrayed, and completely powerless all at once. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Healing will be a long process, but I'm determined not to let Alex's cruelty destroy my spirit. Some scars may never fully fade, but I owe it to myself to try. I know now that the only way forward is to rebuild my confidence from within and not depend on the conditional support of others. My inner light can't be extinguished without my consent. Though it still hurts to look back on that traumatic period of my life, I'm grateful the experience gave me the courage to believe in myself again. I know the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. And that's a lesson no fake profile can ever take away from me. I'd never thought I'd be in this position. It all started a few months after my messy breakup with Lara. We had been together for 5 years, and I thought she was the one. But things fell apart, and we ended up going our separate ways. It was a painful experience, but I tried my best to move on. At first, everything seemed fine. I started to rebuild my life, focusing on work and reconnecting with friends. But then little things began to feel off. Small changes in my home that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The books on my shelf were rearranged, and my favorite mug seemed to have disappeared. I chalked it up to my own forgetfulness, assuming I had simply misplaced things. However, the changes became more frequent and more noticeable. My closet was subtly rearranged, with certain items of clothing missing. The passwords on my online accounts were changed, locking me out. It was then that the paranoia started to set in. I knew someone had been in my home, but I couldn't prove it. I scoured my apartment, looking for any signs of a break-in, but there were none. Everything seemed to be in order, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I started to doubt my own sanity, questioning whether I was simply imagining things. The worst part was the sense of violation. Knowing that someone had been in my personal space, moving my belongings and tampering with my life, made me feel deeply unsettled. I felt like I was constantly on edge, jumping at every sound and scrutinizing every detail of my surroundings. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head. Maybe I was just being paranoid, or perhaps I was simply forgetting things more than I realized. But as the incidents continued to escalate, I knew I had to take action. I started by changing the locks on my apartment, hoping to deter any further intrusions. I also installed a security system with cameras and motion sensors throughout my home. I felt like a prisoner in my own sanctuary, constantly looking over my shoulder and wondering what would happen next. The final straw came when I discovered that the background image on my computer had been changed. It was a picture of Laura smiling back at me with a sickening sense of triumph. I knew then that she was the one behind all of this. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt a mixture of anger, fear, and betrayal. I confronted her, demanding an explanation, but she denied everything. She claimed that I was simply losing my mind, that I was imagining the whole thing. But I knew the truth. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, an overwhelming sense of dread and certainty that she was the one behind it all. From that point on, I became obsessed with trying to catch her in the act. I set up hidden cameras throughout my apartment, monitoring every movement and every change. I jumped at every sound, convinced that she was lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. The paranoia consumed me, and it became increasingly difficult to function in my everyday life. I was constantly on edge, afraid to leave my home, and even more afraid to return to it. I felt like I was living in a nightmare that I couldn't escape. Despite my efforts, I never caught Lara in the act. The changes continued to happen, but there was never any concrete evidence to prove that she was the culprit. It was as if she was a ghost, slipping in and out of my life without a trace. As the months passed, the strain began to take a toll on my mental and physical health. I became withdrawn, isolated, and increasingly unstable. My work suffered, and my relationships with friends and family deteriorated. At times, I considered moving out, starting over somewhere else, but I knew that wouldn't solve the problem. Laura had wormed her way into my life, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she would always be there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. I spent countless nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to come up with a plan to stop her. But every time I thought I had a solution, it slipped through my fingers like sand. In the end, I don't know how I managed to survive that ordeal. It's been a year since the incident started, and I'm still trying to piece my life back together. The scars, both physical and emotional, may never fully heal. I often wonder if Laura is still out there, waiting patiently for her next opportunity to strike. The thought sends chills down my spine, and I find myself constantly on guard, never fully able to let my guard down. This experience has taught me that the human mind can be a powerful and terrifying thing. The line between reality and delusion can be disturbingly thin, and it's a constant battle to maintain a grip on what's real. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I'll never take my sense of security for granted again. The trauma of what I've been through has left an indelible mark on my psyche, and I'll be forever haunted by the memories of the crazy ex who refused to let go. I replay the events over and over in my mind, wondering how I could have prevented it, or if there was any way I could have known just how unhinged Laura had become. Part of me worries that I'll never be able to have a normal relationship again without questioning my partner's sanity or motives. Laura poisoned my ability to trust, and I don't know if that damage can ever fully be undone. For now, I'm focusing on taking things one day at a time and trying to regain some sense of normalcy. But deep down, I know I'll never be the same again after living through that psychological nightmare. The scars run too deep, and the memories are too vivid to simply forget. Laura may be gone, but the shadow she cast over my life remains. I can only hope that with time and distance, her dark presence will fade, and I'll once again be able to feel safe in my own home. But a small paranoid part of me worries that this may be wishful thinking. That perhaps she's still out there plotting her next sinister move, waiting and watching for the perfect moment to unleash her deranged vengeance once again. It started slowly at first, mild headaches that came and went, brief bouts of nausea that I thought were due to stress or something I ate. Life had been turbulent since the breakup, so I figured my body was just reacting to all the upheaval. Never in a million years did I think it was because of him. We had dated for over a year and were even talking marriage before things went south. I thought I knew him, but I guess you never truly know someone. There were little signs in hindsight that I overlooked. His obsessive need for control, flashes of irrational anger over minor things. But love makes you blind. I was hooked on the romantic side of him, the way he lavished me with affection and gifts in the beginning. So I made excuses for the red flags. The first gift arrived a few weeks after the traumatic split, a bottle of luxurious perfume with a note saying he would always love me. I had no reason to be suspicious of something so innocuous, so I sprayed it on my wrists and neck, touched that a part of him still cared. The headache started that very day, though I didn't make the connection then. Over the next few weeks, more gifts appeared. Extravagant bouquets of flowers, gourmet chocolates, expensive jewelry. Each came with a romantic note professing his undying devotion. At first, I was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this meant we still had a chance, that he had realized his mistake and wanted me back. But when I tried to reciprocate or suggest meeting up, his responses grew cold and distant. That's when the worrying physical symptoms started. I was fatigued all the time, rarely kept food down, and had migraines that lasted for days. My doctor ran every test imaginable but couldn't find a cause. Friends worried it was just emotional anguish from the breakup taking its toll, but my gut kept telling me this was something more sinister. The final gift arrived packaged beautifully as always, a bottle of luxurious red wine with a note reminiscing about our time together. Against my better judgment, I had a glass that evening, thinking it would help me relax and sleep better. That turned out to be the final puzzle piece. Whenever he had been slipping, me reacted violently with the wine, sending me into convulsions and near coma. As I regained consciousness in the hospital 2 days later, the doctor said traces of arsenic had been found in my blood. Though not enough each time to be fatal, the repeated exposure had nearly killed me. The ex had been poisoning me through his gifts, the perfume, chocolates, flowers, a slow torture while pretending to want me back. The police searched his home and found a stash of poisons and books on toxins. His internet history showed research on untraceable poisons that mimic natural illnesses. It was the most sinister, diabolical thing I could imagine. My body slowly recovered, though I still had anxiety about what I ingest. I cut off all contact with him, moved to a new place he wouldn't know, got an unlisted number. But the paranoia still follows me. The fear I might run into him somewhere or that he'll find me again. The psychological scars run deeper than the physical ones. I attend a support group now for domestic violence survivors, which has helped me process the trauma and start to rebuild my life. They say true evil often disguises itself with beauty and charm. I experienced that firsthand with my poisoner ex, but I'm determined not to let it destroy me. What I went through was horrific, but it taught me to value myself, trust my instincts, and be cautious in love. There are still good people out there. I know one day I'll be ready to open my heart again, but I'll do so with wisdom, strength, and a more guarded spirit. The next time, I'll see the warning signs before it's too late. I still have nightmares where I relive those terrifying convulsions, my body rebelling against the toxins. In my dreams, his face looms over me, grinning devilishly as I scream and thrash. Those are the nights I wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing. It takes me hours to calm down and reassure myself I'm safe now in my secure apartment. But part of me worries he's still out there obsessed with finishing what he started. During counseling, I was told it's common for trauma survivors to have PTSD-like symptoms. My counselor said I did the right thing by relocating, changing my number, cutting off contact. She assured me the police will catch him if he resurfaces. I'm trying to trust the system, stay vigilant yet not let fear rule my life. It's a delicate balance reclaiming my sense of normalcy after something so horrific. Some days are better than others. There are still triggers, like seeing a bouquet of flowers or smelling perfume in a store. That sent me into a panic attack. I have to talk myself down, separate the trigger from the actual threat that is gone. My friends have been supportive, inviting me to girls' nights, and so I'm not alone. Their understanding and validation help tremendously in the healing process. I know there will be good days and bad days going forward, but I'm taking it one step at a time, focused on rebuilding the life I want. My poisoner ex took so much from me already. I refuse to let him take my future too. This experience taught me how precious life is and how easily it can be taken away. I don't intend to waste a moment living in fear. The sun will rise again tomorrow, and I will greet it with joy, grateful for the opportunity to start fresh. I am a survivor, not a victim. I am stronger for what I endured. There are still wonderful possibilities ahead if I have the courage to embrace them. That is the mindset that keeps me going. That is my victory over evil. It started with a few concerning texts saying she wasn't feeling well. I offered to bring her soup or medicine, but she declined. The next day, she called crying that she was throwing up and had a fever of 104. Of course, I rushed over, only to find her casually watching TV with no signs of illness. She laughed it off, saying it must have just been a 24-hour bug. Over the next few weeks, there was always something: migraines, injuries, car troubles. Each time she described elaborate scenarios designed to worry me into coming to help. But when I arrived, the emergencies would mysteriously vanish. One night, she called screaming that someone was trying to break into her apartment. I sped over, heart racing, ready to confront an intruder. But there was no one there. No signs of forced entry or disturbance. She acted confused, saying she must have just heard noises and overreacted. Her fake emergencies escalated until I was in a constant state of anxiety, never knowing what frightening call or text would come next. She claimed she was being followed, that her brakes gave out on the highway, that she was bleeding and couldn't get it to stop. Each crisis sounded life-threatening, but when I responded, she was always fine. I finally realized she was manipulating me. The emergencies were ploys to make me come running. She seemed obsessed with remaining the center of my world. As long as I kept reacting, she would keep escalating. I told her I couldn't do this anymore, that she needed help. She broke down crying, begging me not to leave. When I remained firm, the tears turned to rage. She hurled insults and threats, saying I would regret this. Over the next few days, my phone blew up with a barrage of messages and voicemails. She said she was going to jump off a bridge, slash her wrists, and make sure I would find her body. This woman tried every manipulation in the book, but I did not engage. I knew these were empty threats designed to lure me back under her power. Eventually, the onslaught stopped. I cautiously hoped she had finally moved on and left me in peace. But then the late-night banging started, pounding on my front door and ringing of the doorbell. When I checked, no one was there. This went on for weeks, fraying my nerves and leaving me unable to sleep. She wanted me to know she was still lurking, a predator toying with her prey. I considered getting a restraining order, but knew that could provoke her rage. So I toughed it out, comforting myself with the knowledge I had escaped her twisted web. One morning, I opened my door to find a mutilated rabbit on my welcome mat. It was a chilling warning that she was escalating to physical threats. I installed security cameras and changed all my locks, precautions that allowed me to sleep again. Over time, the harassment tapered off. I started to rebuild a life free from this woman's toxicity and manipulation. I still look over my shoulder more than I should have to, but the healing has begun. Her cruel pranks and mind games took an emotional toll I'm still recovering from. But walking away was the only way to regain control and escape her cycle of manufactured chaos. I thought I was finally free, but then the emails started. First, it was just a few short messages saying she missed me, she made a mistake, she wanted me back. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. The emails became angrier, threatening to make me regret leaving her. She said she would ruin my reputation, turn all our mutual friends against me. I blocked her email, hoping that would be the end of it. But she created new addresses to get around the block. No matter what I did, the abusive emails kept coming. She seemed obsessed with punishing me for rejecting her. Her online harassment eventually escalated to smearing my name on social media. She posted lies saying I had abused and cheated on her. Former friends and even some family members distanced themselves, unsure what to believe. I felt violated that she would try to turn my whole community against me. I continued ignoring her, but inside I was a mess of anger, regret, and sadness. I constantly wondered if cutting ties had been for the best, or if I should have tried to get her help. Maybe if I had been more patient and understanding, she would have gotten better. But deep down, I knew that was just her manipulation talking. She reveled in keeping me under her spell. Staying would have put my mental and maybe even physical safety at risk. As painful as this was, leaving gave me my life back. After months of online slander, she finally seemed to lose interest when I didn't take the bait. The posts tapered off. My reputation recovered and I rebuilt damaged relationships. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if this respite was just another manipulation or if she had truly moved on. Over a year later, I finally felt safe enough to start dating again. I was wary of getting into another unhealthy relationship. Once I met someone genuinely kind, I took the leap. Of course, my ex found out almost immediately, and the nightmare began again. She resurfaced with a vengeance, escalating her threats against me and also targeting the new one in my life. It was clear she saw anyone else having a piece of me as a threat. We considered getting restraining orders, but never went through with it. I just wanted her out of my life for good. Thankfully, after a few months of new drama, things settled down again. It's now been 3 years since I left that toxic relationship. I still look over my shoulder and worry about what schemes she may be plotting, but her manipulations have less power over me now. Healing from emotional abuse takes time, but each day my scars fade a little more. I'm in a much healthier relationship and finally putting my life back together. I'll always be vigilant, since I know her obsession could resurface anytime, but I refuse to sacrifice my happiness and sanity. Staying under her spell would have destroyed me. Leaving gave me back my freedom, and I never intend to give that up again. It all started when my ex-partner, Kelly, broke things off with me after a 2-year relationship. I was blindsided. Everything had seemed fine between us, or so I thought. Little did I know the nightmare that was about to unfold. Within a week, I started getting strange calls and emails from my boss, my biggest clients, and even some of my industry contacts. They all had questions about my unprofessional behavior and questionable ethics. I was completely confused. I prided myself on my stellar reputation and had never had any issues at work before. As I dug deeper, a disturbing pattern emerged. Kelly had been systematically contacting everyone in my professional life, spinning wild tales about me. She claimed I had embezzled funds from a client, that I had harassed an employee, that I had been showing up to meetings drunk. Horrified, I realized she was trying to destroy my career. I confronted Kelly, begging her to stop these lies, but she just laughed in my face. You always thought you were better than me, she sneered. Now it's time for me to take you down a peg. I was shaken. I had no idea she harbored such resentment and cruelty towards me. Over the next few months, the situation only got worse. More and more people in my life were turning against me, based on Kelly's venomous claims. My boss called me in for a stern talk, warning that if the allegations continued, he would have no choice but to let me go. My biggest client abruptly ended our contract, citing a loss of trust. I felt powerless to stop the onslaught. Whenever I tried to defend myself, Kelly would simply cry victim and claim I was harassing her. She seemed to have an uncanny knack for making me look like the bad guy, no matter what I did. It was infuriating and deeply demoralizing. The stress of it all started to take a serious toll on my mental and physical health. I was barely sleeping, constantly anxious, and my work was suffering. I felt like I was slowly drowning with no way to save myself. Desperate, I tried to document everything Kelly was doing in the hopes of building a case against her, but she was always one step ahead of me. She would delete incriminating messages or sweet talk my friends and colleagues into believing her side of the story. It was a truly Sisyphean task. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Kelly upped the ante. She started contacting my elderly parents, telling them lies about how I was a deadbeat son who had abandoned them. My parents, who had always been so proud of my professional success, were heartbroken and turned against me. The betrayal was devastating. I felt so alone with no one left to turn to. Kelly had managed to alienate me from everyone in my life, all while making me look like the villain. I sank into a deep depression, questioning everything I had worked so hard to build. Finally, in a last-ditch effort, I decided to take legal action against Kelly. I hired a reputable lawyer and filed a defamation lawsuit, hoping to put an end to her campaign of destruction. But even that proved to be an uphill battle. Kelly hired her own team of lawyers who were skilled at burying me in paperwork and dragging out the proceedings. Every time I thought I had a solid case, they would find some technicality to poke holes in it. It was an exhausting, drawn-out process that only added to my mounting stress and anxiety. As the lawsuit dragged on for over a year, I watched helplessly as my career continued to crumble. I lost more clients, was passed over for promotions, and even had to take a significant pay cut just to keep my job. It was a nightmare, and I felt powerless to stop it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the court ruled in my favor. Kelly was ordered to cease all defamatory actions and pay significant damages. But the victory felt hollow. The damage to my reputation was already done, and I knew it would take years to rebuild the trust I had lost. Even now, years later, the scars of that ordeal still linger. I'm constantly on edge, worried that Kelly will find some new way to undermine me. I've had to be extremely careful and strategic in my professional dealings, always on the lookout for any potential threats. It's an exhausting way to live, but I know I can never let my guard down. Kelly has proven that she is relentless in her quest to destroy me, and I can't afford to give her any openings. I sometimes wonder if I'll ever be able to fully move on from this nightmare. The emotional toll has been immense, and I still struggle with feelings of resentment, paranoia, and self-doubt. But I'm determined to keep fighting to not let Kelly's cruelty and vindictiveness win. This experience has taught me the importance of being vigilant, of documenting everything, and of surrounding myself with a strong support system. It's a hard-won lesson, but one that I know will serve me well in the years to come. For now, I'll continue to navigate this treacherous landscape, always on the lookout for the next potential landmine. It all started about a year after I had broken up with my ex, Selena. We had dated for 3 years, and the relationship had ended messily, with a lot of anger and resentment on both sides. I thought I had moved on, but it was clear that Selena had not. One day, I came home from work to find the police waiting for me. They informed me that I was being charged with breaking and entering, theft, and assault, all concerning an incident that had apparently occurred earlier that day at Selena's apartment. Apparently, witnesses had seen me force my way into her place, steal some valuables, and then attack her when she confronted me. I was in complete shock. I had done no such thing. The police did not seem to believe my protestations of innocence. They showed me photos of the evidence, a broken window, some of Selena's jewelry in a bag, and pictures of bruises on her arms. I tried to explain that this must be some kind of setup, but the officers were unmoved. They placed me under arrest and took me down to the station. Over the next few days, the case against me seemed to only get stronger. More witnesses came forward, all of whom claimed to have seen me fleeing the scene. Security camera footage mysteriously emerged that seemed to show a person resembling me entering and leaving the apartment. Even Selena's neighbors reported hearing a commotion and seeing me leave hurriedly. The prosecutor was very confident that they had a solid case. I was utterly bewildered. How could this be happening? I knew beyond any doubt that I was innocent, but it was clear the police and the courts were fully convinced of my guilt. My lawyer tried his best to poke holes in the evidence, but the more he dug, the more incriminating details seemed to surface. I started to fear that I was going to be convicted despite my innocence. As the trial date approached, I became increasingly paranoid and on edge. I had no idea what Selena was capable of, and the thought that she might have orchestrated this whole thing to get back at me was terrifying. I started to second guess everything, wondering if I had somehow missed some crucial detail that could exonerate me. The trial was a nightmare. Selena took the stand and delivered a chilling and convincing account of the attack, complete with tears and trembling. The prosecution's witnesses were unwavering in their testimony, and the physical evidence seemed damning. My lawyer did his best, but the judge and jury appeared convinced of my guilt. Just as it seemed like all hope was lost, a breakthrough came in the form of a surveillance video from a nearby store. The footage clearly showed me at work, miles away from Selena's apartment, at the exact time the crime was supposed to have occurred. The judge had no choice but to dismiss the charges. I was elated, but also deeply shaken. The realization that Selena had gone to such lengths to frame me was almost too much to bear. She had manipulated witnesses, planted evidence, and carefully constructed an entire false narrative, all to destroy my life. I had narrowly escaped, but the ordeal had taken a heavy toll. In the aftermath, I learned that Selena had become increasingly unhinged and obsessive following our breakup. She had become convinced that I had wronged her and was determined to get revenge. The elaborate scheme she had concocted was the result of months of planning and manipulation. I was left feeling violated, paranoid, and deeply distrustful of those around me. How could I ever know who else Selena might have turned against me? The thought that she might try something like this again haunted me constantly. I became hyper-vigilant, scrutinizing every interaction and every piece of information for potential signs of her machinations. To this day, I am still recovering from the trauma of that experience. The ordeal has left me scarred both emotionally and psychologically. I have had to rebuild my life and my relationships from the ground up, always wary of the possibility that Selena might resurface and try to destroy everything again. The most chilling part is that I know I got lucky. If that surveillance footage hadn't surfaced, I would likely be serving a lengthy prison sentence right now, my life completely ruined. The thought that Selena could have succeeded in frightening me so completely is absolutely terrifying. I try to take solace in the fact that she is now serving a lengthy sentence for her crimes, but the damage she has done to me is difficult to quantify. The trust I once had in those around me has been shattered, and I now view the world with a jaded and cynical lens. I'm constantly on guard, always wondering if the people in my life might be working against me, just like Selena did. In the end, I suppose I should be grateful that I was able to prove my innocence, but the scars of that ordeal will likely never fully heal. Selena's twisted actions have left an indelible mark on my psyche, and I know that I will never be the same person I was before. All I can do is try to move forward, one day at a time, and hope that I never have to face something like that ever again. It all started when my ex Derry broke up with me. At first, it seemed amicable enough. We had been together for 2 years, but the spark had faded and we decided to go our separate ways. I was sad, but I understood. That was until a few weeks later when the barrage of messages started. At first, it was just angry rants, accusing me of cheating and not appreciating her. I tried to reason with her to explain that it just wasn't working out, but she refused to listen, only growing more unhinged with each interaction. Then the threats started rolling in. She claimed she had gathered all sorts of compromising information about me, photos, messages, even false stories she had fabricated, and she was going to release it all online if I didn't take her back. My heart sank as I realized the seriousness of the situation. Sure enough, before long, random posts began appearing on my social media accounts. Unflattering photos of me, messages taken out of context, and wild accusations. I frantically tried to delete them, but she seemed to have access to my accounts. Anything I removed would just reappear elsewhere. The campaign against me quickly escalated. She started contacting my friends and family, spinning tales about my supposed misdeeds. Some of them believed her, suddenly becoming distant and wary of me. It was mortifying. My workplace was next. Derry managed to get a hold of my work email and started bombarding my boss and colleagues with her fabricated stories. I was terrified I would lose my job. My boss pulled me aside, clearly concerned, demanding an explanation. I tried to tell him the truth, but he seemed skeptical. The damage had been done. I felt trapped, like my entire life was unraveling around me. Everywhere I turned, there was the specter of Derry's vengeance. I couldn't trust anyone or do anything without worrying about the next attack. It was completely overwhelming. I tried reasoning with her, pleading for her to stop, but she only grew more unhinged, cackling about how she was going to ruin my life. Nothing I said seemed to get through to her. She was consumed by her own twisted sense of betrayal. At my wit's end, I eventually had to involve the authorities. I filed a report with the police detailing the harassment and threats. They seemed skeptical at first, but as more evidence mounted, they began to take it seriously. A restraining order was issued, forbidding Derry from contacting me or my loved ones. For a brief moment, I dared to hope that the nightmare was over, but Derry was undeterred. She continued her smear campaign, finding new ways to circumvent the restraining order. Anonymous social media accounts, burner phones, even enlisting friends to do her bidding. It was an all-out assault on my life and sanity. The stress and anxiety of it all took a heavy toll. I became a paranoid, jumpy mess, constantly on edge. Every notification, every interaction filled me with dread. I started isolating myself, too afraid to engage with the outside world. My work suffered, my relationships crumbled. I was drowning. In desperation, I sought legal counsel. Lawyers filed cease and desist orders, threatened lawsuits, and even pushed for Derry's arrest. But she was always one step ahead, constantly finding new ways to torment me. It was an endless, exhausting game of cat and mouse. The worst part was the feeling of total helplessness. No matter what I did, Derry always found a way to strike back. My life was no longer my own. It had been hijacked and held hostage by this vindictive, unhinged person. I felt powerless to stop it. Eventually, the stress and anxiety became too much to bear. I fell into a deep depression, barely able to function from day to day. The simplest tasks felt overwhelming. I stopped going to work, stopped returning calls from friends and family. I just wanted to disappear. In my darkest moments, I even entertained thoughts of taking my own life, just to escape the unrelenting torment. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I had to keep fighting, if only to prove to Derry that she wouldn't break me. It's been over a year now, and the ordeal still isn't over. Derry's campaign of harassment continues, morphing and adapting as I try to counter each new tactic. I've had to change jobs, move to a new city, and essentially rebuild my entire life from scratch. The emotional scars may never fully heal. Looking back, I still can't quite believe the sheer scale of Derry's obsession and the lengths she was willing to go to destroy me. What started as a bad breakup has turned into a living nightmare that I struggle to wake up from. I've lost so much, my sense of safety, my self-confidence, even my ability to trust others. But I'm still here, still fighting. It's an uphill battle, and some days I'm not sure I have the strength to keep going. But I refuse to let Derry win. I won't let her take everything from me. This is my life, and I'm determined to take it back no matter how long it takes. I had to learn how to be more careful, more vigilant about protecting myself and my information. It's exhausting, but necessary. I don't post much online anymore. Don't share details of my life or location if I can avoid it. I know Derry is always lurking, watching, and waiting for any opening to exploit. I won't give her the satisfaction. Rebuilding relationships has been hard. So many people in my life were impacted by Derry's lies and harassment. Some believed her fabrications, others were simply scared away by the chaos she created around me. It's been a slow process, proving to people I'm not the monster she made me out to be. I value those who stuck by me more than ever. While the paranoia still lingers, I'm making progress. Therapy has helped me work through some of the trauma and start taking back control of my life. I refuse to let Derry haunt my every waking moment anymore. She already took so much. I won't allow her to take the rest of my happiness and peace of mind. I know she's still out there, consumed by her obsession and desire for vengeance. Maybe one day she'll finally move on, or the legal obstacles will become too much for her. All I can do is protect myself as best I can, rebuild what I've lost, and keep moving forward. It's a constant struggle, but I'm regaining my sense of self one day at a time. Some scars may never fully fade, but I won't let them define me. This experience has changed me. I'm wiser, stronger, and unwilling to be victimized ever again. As traumatic as it's only made me more determined to take back control and live my life on my own terms. No matter what she tries to take from me, Derry can't have my spirit and inner resolve. I refuse to let her win. She wanted to break me, but instead she's only made me unbreakable. I may be battered and bruised, but I'm still standing. And I have no plans of going anywhere except forward, toward the peaceful, happy life I deserve. It may take time to fully reclaim it, but I'm ready for the fight. It was a crisp fall morning when I first saw it, the photo that made my heart drop into my stomach. There she was, the woman who had broken my heart just months before, smiling brightly with her arm wrapped around a woman who looked exactly like me. Same long brown hair, same dark eyes, even wearing one of my signature floral dresses. I blinked a few times, wondering if I was seeing things. But no, it was crystal clear. My ex had started dating someone who could be my doppelganger. I knew Emma always had a jealous streak, but I never thought she'd go this far. During our relationship, she was often paranoid, accusing me of looking at other women or caring about my friends more than her. No matter how much I reassured Emma, she never fully trusted me. In the end, her insecurities drove us apart. I had to end things for my own sanity. But now here she was, flaunting this look-alike all over social media. Every day there were new photos of them laughing, kissing, going on cute couples adventures. The woman, I later learned her name was Sam, seemed completely oblivious to the bizarre dynamic. I searched for some sign that this was all a joke, but her accounts showed no trace of irony. As far as I could tell, she genuinely had no idea that Emma was using her as some twisted attempt at revenge. I did my best to ignore it at first. I knew Emma wanted a reaction out of me, so I was determined not to give her the satisfaction. But they just kept popping up everywhere I looked. At the coffee shop we used to go to every Saturday, tagging the restaurants I took her to for our anniversary dinners, frolicking through the park where we shared our first kiss. It was like Emma had made a checklist of all our most sentimental spots, and was deliberately tainting those memories one by one. Seeing my doppelganger's face in all those significant places felt like a knife slowly twisting in my chest. It brought up so many conflicting emotions: nostalgia for the good times with Emma, pain from how terribly it ended, frustration that she was so fixated on hurting me. I started avoiding going anywhere we used to go together, worried I'd turn a corner and see the two of them laughing brightly just to cut me down. Of course, Emma made sure I didn't fully escape. Every few days, an anonymous bouquet of flowers would appear on my doorstep, always the same: pink roses and baby's breath, the same combination Emma gave me before our very first date. I quickly dumped it in the trash, my heart racing. She was letting me know she still had access to everything about my life, even my home address. After a particularly long day at work, I snapped. There on my timeline was a photo of Emma and Sam in coordinating outfits, snuggled up at the jazz club where we shared our first dance. Seeing them in our most sacred place, living out the romance Emma at once had, finally broke me. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and texted Emma a string of angry messages, demanding she stop this insane charade. Moments later, I came to my senses and deleted the text before she could provoke me further. I knew I couldn't let her get the dramatic confrontation she wanted. After that night, I went completely silent on social media for a while, avoiding anything that might lead me to stumble upon photos of the happy couple. Focusing on work and friends helped get me through the worst of it. But I knew I couldn't hide forever. I started cautiously getting back on social media, bracing myself each time for the possibility of seeing Sam's familiar face. To my surprise, after a few weeks, Emma's revenge campaigns seemed to have lost steam. The photos of her and Sam became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Had she finally gotten bored without the reaction she wanted from me? Or maybe Sam had wised up and realized she was being used. I may never know exactly what happened, but I was relieved to have a reprieve from the daily torment. While that painful chapter may be behind me now, its scars haven't fully healed. I still feel anxious turning corners in our old familiar haunts, half expecting to see Sam waiting there with a smug smile. Crowds make me jittery. Is she lurking nearby, watching me for Emma? I know rationally it's unlikely, but I can't shake the paranoia completely. Healing from psychological wounds takes time, and Emma inflicted plenty with her unhinged scheme. But if her goal was to make me suffer, she also failed in an important way. Going through that ordeal taught me I'm much stronger than I realized. Emma wanted to break me, but her games only made me more determined to live my life on my own terms. I refused to keep looking over my shoulder or let past heartbreak keep me from finding happiness again one day. What we had clearly meant a lot more to her than to me in the end. I've moved on, while Emma stays fixated on the past we can't get back. Wherever she and Sam ended up, I pity them. One stuck living in bitter fantasies, the other obliviously being used. I'm ready to find something real. In the months since then, I've slowly regained my sense of security and self. It took time, but I now rarely think of Emma when I pass familiar old haunts in our city. I still instinctively scan crowds, but I don't let that stop me from living life. Dating again was hard at first. I found myself suspicious of anyone who resembled Emma or Sam. But with time, I learned to be more open and trusting again with new people. Letting go of the anger and hurt from Emma's schemes wasn't easy. For a while, venting about it to close friends was cathartic. But eventually, I realized dwelling on the past gave Emma power over me still. True healing meant focusing my mental energy on the present, not what she did. I know Emma wanted to control me, consume my thoughts, and make me suffer. By embracing life again, I took back that control. On my better days, I can even find compassion for Emma. Clearly, she was deeply insecure or afraid of losing me. Maybe her actions came from a place of perceived abandonment or betrayal after I ended things. They don't excuse her behavior, but provide context. I hope sharing life with Sam gave Emma whatever she felt she lacked with me. I wish nothing but the best for both of them, wherever the journey led. My experience with Emma taught me that things often aren't what they appear on the surface. Even the happiest looking couples on social media can hide darker truths. I used to take everything at face value, but I'm now slower to judge others' relationships. You never fully know what private struggles someone is facing. With that insight, I feel wiser and more empathetic as I continue my own path. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.